Peace everyone, Unmask Art here, and today I'm going to share the hierarchy of good art. So if you are looking to improve your art or just develop a deeper understanding of what makes good art, then here are the 5 tiers of good art. So the first and most important tier of the hierarchy of good art is contrast. And contrast is the measurable range of values from dark to light. So now I'm going to show you a couple examples of how important contrast is to drastically improving a piece of art. Now, as you can see, this portrait here is drawn really well, and overall it actually looks quite good as well. The only thing is it's rather light and it doesn't have a lot of contrast. There's not a very noticeable difference between the darkest values and the lightest values. So if I increase the contrast, I'm going to darken the darkest spots of the image while keeping the brighter spots of the image still there. And so you're going to have a good range of values from the darkest black to the lightest light. So here you can see with the wider range of contrast, it drastically improves the portrait. And here I have another example of a portrait that may not be considered drawn at the same level as the first one, but here you'll be able to see just how much of a difference contrast makes even when the drawing itself is not at the highest standard. So you can see by widening the range of values and increasing the overall contrast, even though the drawing itself is not top tier level, it still drastically improves the artwork overall. And that's why contrast is the #1 most important aspect of improving your art. Now moving on to the second most important tier of the hierarchy, it is texture. And texture is the observable difference in roughness from smooth to coarse. And this could be a variety of different objects. So here's the first example exploring how texture improves your artwork. Now, this still life here is actually drawn quite well and it looks rather nice. It has good values and great overall contrast. However, it's missing any change in texture that sort of brings attention to any particular object in the artwork. And now in the texturized version of this artwork, you can see just how much more depth is created and how much more visual interest the artwork has simply by including some variety in texture. You have some roughness, you have some smoothness, you have a mix in between, and this gives you a textural contrast. And here you can see the second example of how the change in the textural contrast allows you to create a really cool depth of field effect in your artwork as well. So here you can see how the barn is a little bit farther away. In the first version, everything sort of feels two-dimensional, but in the second version where you have a little bit of variety and texture, the grass really comes to life, the trees come into focus, the foreground is sort of pushed away, the background is sort of pushed away, and you get this really cool depth of field sort of effect just by manipulating the texture. So as we move up in the hierarchy of good art, things are going to start to get a little bit more ambiguous and subjective, which brings us to composition. Composition is just the balanced arrangement of objects in space. So here's the first example discussing composition. As you can see, I've centered the image right in the middle of the canvas there, and it looks pretty good. It's not terrible, but there are some flaws, some unbalances, and the measurement of such unbalances are not exactly objective, which makes composition rather difficult to explain or to teach. And here is the same image just slightly moved up and off center to sort of bring the image as a whole more into the canvas so that you can see more and it doesn't feel like her head is kind of chopped off. Now, when it comes to composition, my advice has always been try several different variations of placement. I find that to be the best route to progress with improving your overall composition. Oftentimes, when you're drawing, you sort of just start in the middle of the paper and you sketch out some stuff. Well, I would say that that is a very good way to progress. I would say that it's much better to do small thumbnail versions of the large scale drawing and sort of identify where the placement feels the best for you. And here's another example how composition can really change the overall feel and appearance of your artwork. It's a subtle change. The close-up version of this dog is still really well done, but as far as composition goes, it's a little bit unbalanced. And if you look over on the right side, you can see being able to see a little bit more of the dog makes it feel a little bit more of an official portrait. So it gives the artwork a completely different feel just by changing the composition a little bit. And that brings us to the fourth hierarchy of good art. And some of you may be surprised to find that color really isn't all that important. As you have noticed, we've only been looking at grayscale artwork up to this point, so color hasn't been involved at all for creating good art. And in many ways, you can create wonderful art without ever involving color. However, color is one of the more difficult aspects of art to incorporate into your artwork because it is the harmonious array of hue and saturation. And the key word there is harmonious. So let's have a look at a few examples that are lacking a bit of harmony in the color. So here we have our first example, and as you can see, it is exceptionally vibrant. There are a lot of bright greens and pinks and yellows and even a little bit of cyan in the sky. This isn't a terrible painting by any means. It's very colorful, and oftentimes this is the mistake that a lot of people make when they want to create an abundantly colorful scene, is that they oversaturate all of the colors, and saturation is just sort of the color intensity. And what you end up getting is something that isn't quite as balanced, and that's something that really diminishes the overall quality of the artwork. So it lacks that harmonious color scheme that you want to aim for. Now here's that same painting where I just changed the color saturation a little bit. I dulled down the green a bit and I lowered the intensity of a couple of the colors, in particular the sky. I didn't feel like the really bright cyan color in the sky was bringing much into the foreground. By softening the saturation of the greens, it really allows the reds and the oranges and the yellows to pop through without feeling like a neon sign. Now, this is just one variation that you could go with this particular kind of style or painting, where the grass is sort of dulled down a little bit, but you could also choose some other colors to tone down and then increase the intensity of the grass. If you wanted the green to be more of the intense color, you just need to find that balance of intensity and let the colors that you want to shine through while not competing with all of the other intense, highly saturated colors. Here is another example of where the high intensity saturated colors are sort of fighting against each other. Remember, we're looking for harmony here, not competition. And you can see that the highly saturated colors around the face of this beautiful portrait is sort of pulling the attention away from the bright skin tones, and it's sort of making the skin look a little less alive. Now, by just balancing that intensity of a few of the colors and making some adjustments to the saturation levels of the background, it allows the skin to shine through more brightly, and it really emphasizes those really nice orange red tones in the skin, and it brings the portrait much more to life by having those colors show through without having to compete with all of the other highly saturated colors in the background. And now the final tier of the hierarchy of good art is uniqueness. And uniqueness is just the distinct features that presents as style in your artwork. So as you can imagine, style and uniqueness are by far the most subjective aspect of good art. And it's something that I've been asked for years by so many people while I've been teaching art. And I've always had a rather simple answer to this seemingly complex issue that so many people face when it comes to them trying to find their style. And the best analogy I've been able to come up with over the years that I continue to use is that you have nothing to worry about. It is not something that you need to force yourself to develop in any way whatsoever. The analogy that I use for this is when you talk. When you open your mouth and you speak words, you don't force yourself to have the voice that you can't stand hearing on recordings. You simply speak the way that you do, and your artwork is the exact same. When you put the pencil to paper or the brush to canvas, and you create what you enjoy, you create what you love, you speak your voice. That's all that you have to do. That's all that you have to do. When you have a distinct style, it can be influenced by everything that you're inspired by, but at the end of the day, if you continue to work, progress, and get better at what you enjoy doing, then all you have to do is create. All you have to do is continue drawing, continue coloring and painting just the way that you enjoy doing it. And your style, your uniqueness is inherent in everything that you create, because no matter who tries to replicate you or who you try to replicate, you will never be exactly like them. You will always have your own uniqueness. So simply continue speaking and continue creating, because that is all that you need to achieve the highest tier of hierarchy of good art. All right, everyone, there you have it. That is the hierarchy of good art. I hope that you enjoyed this video and learned something. If you have any questions about any of the stuff that I talked about today, feel free to let me know in the comments. I'll do my best to answer all the questions that I get. Of course, if you want to learn more from me, then I would highly encourage you to join the Art Club. That's my own online membership website where I teach you everything that I know. I have hundreds of projects and thousands of hours of live tutorials that I do in the Art Club. You have access to the reference photos and the line art to every project. I discuss the hierarchy of art all the time in my live streams, which I do every Monday and Tuesday, which you can watch right here on YouTube. You just have to be there for the live stream. And I hope that you got something out of this video. If you did, let me know. If you didn't, also let me know. I'll try to do better next time. Until then, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Peace.